Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. All right, folks, I am really excited to introduce you to a very special person today, Rita Collins, who happens to be a resident of Roland Park Place, a life plan community in Baltimore, Maryland. But the story around Rita, I've never heard anything like it. And so I am thrilled to introduce her to you all and to have the discussion to learn more about you and your background, Rita. So first off, thank you for being with me today.
No, I'm excited to get to talk with you.
All right. So Rita, we're gonna walk through, your move to a community in Baltimore. But before we do, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background.
I think a good place to start is to say I've always moved a lot, because I think that makes a difference when we get to the part about how I ended up in Baltimore at Roland Park Place. From when I was in my 20s, I started moving, and I've lived in 8 different states in the US, and I've lived in 2 different countries overseas. So I kind of have moving and becoming part of new communities down. Because I'm an extrovert and I like meeting new people and I like exploring new places. So that has made it easy. During those years when I was moving a lot, I mostly worked as a teacher. I taught everything from kids in elementary school to people in graduate school. And so I've had a pretty diverse teaching career. And then when I was in my 60s, I thought before I retired from teaching, it would be nice to open a bookstore. At that point, I was living in rural Montana, and the town, 1,500 people, really couldn't support a brick and mortar bookstore. It didn't get enough tourists to make it work financially. And so had the idea to try a traveling bookstore, get a van and fill it with books, take it to where people were, so that my overhead was very low when I wasn't actually operating the bookstore. And when I had the bookstore out at an event, there were a lot of customers. So that's what I started doing.
Okay, I really kind of want to dive in a little bit to this entrepreneurial aspect of your background. Had you ever, was this the first time that you had started a commercial enterprise, a business is with the bookstore?
At one point, when was that? In the early 90s, I had just moved to Montana. I was teaching. I met some other people who were like-minded in looking at our community and identifying needs. There was hardly anything happening with the arts, with adult education, or with social services. And so we decided to start a nonprofit that could address some of those needs. And because it was a little town and we were starting from zero, we decided we'd open a bakery as a way to provide a space for some of the activities that we would do. So for 5 years, we ran a bakery. One of the people did it full time. I was doing it part time because I was also teaching. One of the other partners was a social worker. So she had a job, but she also would work part-time at the bakery. So between us all, we kept the bakery going. And by then, after 5 years, the nonprofit had taken off, especially with social services. And so we were able to sell the bakery and the building and focus on what we wanted to focus on at that point.
Wow. So your first entrepreneurial venture was really a very social entrepreneurial venture, but I imagine that made it a lot easier when you were inspired by the idea to start the traveling bookstore.
Yeah. Well, I think it was because the one partner who helped get the bakery going and also the nonprofit was very much a business person. And so that was helpful as far as kind of thinking about how things go. I mean, he always used to say, just because you like good bread doesn't mean you need a bakery. And so, well, you don't need to start a bakery. He thought starting the bakery was for more of a purpose than just having good bread in our community. But but yeah, I did think about that when I started the bookstore. Not, I love reading, but the bookstore isn't about my reading. I have tons of books I can read without operating the bookstore. But the bookstore is it's just its own special venture.
I love it. Okay. So now I know we're going to talk about your move to Roland Park Place in Baltimore, but before we do that, I'd love to dive into your some of the methodology of your moves up to that point. Like, for example, like you've lived in 8 different places, but what caused you to think about rural Montana as a location that where you obviously made a nice home for yourself?
Mhm. Well, some friends had moved to that part of Montana, and I had gone there numerous times to visit. I was married at that point, and we decided to buy a piece of land because land at that time was quite cheap in Montana in the northwest
Mhm.
corner. And we were living in Portland, Oregon. So it was about a 10-hour drive. So you could do it for go up for a week's vacation or to visit whatever. And there was a train. You could take a train from Portland to nearby where the land was. So did that for a number of years and then decided to try living there. Um, and see how it goes. And so yeah, so moved up to Montana, and I got a job with the community college in Kalispell, and met the people who we decided to start the nonprofit. So we did that. So became very much entwined in that community,
Oh,
and um, and lived there for about 10 years. At which point my marriage was falling apart, and 9/11 happened, and I felt like I needed a different place. And
mhm.
so started doing searches for jobs overseas and ended up teaching in Romania.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is that's pretty cool. Um, okay, I may come back to some of these topics that you've introduced because you're very interesting, but let's kind of fast forward to where you're living now, a life plan community in Baltimore, and tell us what brought this transition into your orbit.
So where I lived in Montana, after being overseas for 8 years, I moved back to Montana. And
Okay.
I realized that although there were many, many things to like about my community there, it wasn't the best place for a single woman who was aging. Um, to go to my MD was a 50-mile drive. To go
Hmm.
to the closest hospital was like 50 miles to a smaller one, and then 70 miles to a larger one. So everything involved a lot of transportation. So I decided to put together a spreadsheet of things I was looking for. I wanted to live in a place where there were things closer than 50 miles and that I could actually walk to some things in my community. So I wanted an urban setting and not to live on one of these large campuses out in the countryside. I also wanted a nonprofit. When I looked at numbers, they just seemed to do better financially than for profits, less likely to be sold, to change management. So I wanted a nonprofit. I was also hoping to find one that wasn't part of a kind of larger corporation, so that management was on site, and Roland Park Place had that. So anyhow, so I just made a list of my criteria, and because of the bookstore, I travel a lot. So I started visiting places. I identified a place in Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. And so when I would be on the road with my bookstore, then I would set up an appointment to take a tour and talk with people in the different places. And Roland Park was, I mean, hands down, it met all
Wow.
my criteria.
Okay, we're going to dive into that a little bit, but I love this idea of you traveling around the country with your bookstore and visiting these senior uh, living communities. Um, uh, Tell me a little bit about the bookstore in terms of do you set up at farmers markets, or what is the model? And folks, if you're interested in learning more about it, it's saintritasbooks.com, and you're operating it while you live there. You
Yeah.
continue to operate it. Okay,
Oh,
great.
yeah.
But
I'm
tell us
from
a little bit
Montana.
about what the model of it. Yeah.
So it's a bookstore in a van. I arrange events, gigs, and when I pull in, then I just open the door and set it up, and people can go into the van. It's a high top, so they can stand up inside, and it's very well organized, floor to ceiling books on shelves, divided by categories. So it's easy once people are in the van to find what they're interested in. Um, it holds about 700 to 800 volumes. And I know, I have set up so many different places. It's hard to kind of narrow it down. This evening, I'm setting up at Pregal Family Creamery, which is a farm outside of Baltimore City. And they raise cows and make ice cream and cheese. And on Friday nights, they bring in food trucks and music, and a lot of people go there. And I took my bookstore there once, and they really liked having the bookstore there, and I really liked being there. Earlier this week, I set up at a farmer's market. I set up at a music festival, a small music festival. And I went up to Havre de Grace, which is about an hour north of Baltimore, to a small department store that was having an event and wanted to feature books. And so they invited me to come up for that. So I've set up at brew pubs, at cafes. I've gone to schools, libraries, art galleries, museums, festivals. I mean, it's the
Wow.
list. I mean, I've been doing it 11 years. So,
Okay.
so the list just keeps growing.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay, so now you've traveled around and you found this community in Baltimore, and now you're living there. Well, tell us a little bit about the what that's like, and so far has it been meeting your expected vision of this new chapter in your life?
I will say I moved here late October, and so I haven't really officially been here even a year yet. It's going
Hmm.
on a year. And during that year, twice I was on trips, so I was gone almost 4 months total. So really, my time here has been maybe 6 to 7 months. So that, I think that puts it into perspective. When I first moved to Montana, a woman said to me, "You really have to live someplace 5 years before you can make a judgment on it." But I will say I'm really happy with this period at Roland Park Place. It's I can walk places, which I very much appreciate. It supports a lot of things in the arts, concerts. Last night, I was able to go to a concert. They took a bus load of us down to Peabody Library to hear music, which was delightful. And there's a lot of art happening within the community itself. People playing music, people painting, just all kinds of different arts happening here. So as an artist, I really appreciate that and feel supported. I also feel that the structure here responds to to the needs and ideas, the vision of residents. So for an example, I'm into books, and I thought it would be a good idea to have a little free library, not on our campus, but at the edge of our campus. So it would be open for people in the community and not just Roland Park Place. We actually have a library within our building, but I thought this would be a nice way to kind of share books with people in the community. And the people in the administration here, yeah, okay, let's get one. Let's make it happen. And so, yeah, so within a pretty short time, now we have a beautiful residents painted it, and we keep it filled with books, and yeah, so it's great. So there's a lot of things I like about living here, and I will say to your point about the people who are like, oh no, I could never live at a place like that. The variety, Roland Park Place is fairly small. I think it has about 250 people in independent living. So it's not a huge population, but it's a very varied population. Right? We have people from 60s to over 100, so a 40-year spread. So when people say, oh, I don't want to live with just old people, it's like, if you're in your 20s, it would be like living with people between 20 and 60, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of variety in there, and there's a lot of variety here. Not just the age span, but the interest, the things people want. I mean, I know there are individuals who are so excited about all the activities that are on campus and don't really feel a need to leave at all. I go out with my bookstore, but I also go out for other events. And so I feel like I kind of have a balance of doing things with the Roland Park Place community and also doing things within the larger Baltimore community.
I love your description of the community there. And then I think one of the main events when people are researching life plan communities is the future. It's looking, because none of us have a crystal ball, and it's what would happen if, and to your point, driving 50 miles to your doctor is not ideal if you had a healthcare diagnosis. Did that factor in, and what are your thoughts on where you live in the event, and hopefully it doesn't happen to you or any of the residents, but in the event that you had some healthcare changes, did that play a role in the decision to move to the community?
Yeah, of course, because I wanted a CCRC so that I wouldn't have to, at some point down the road, when I was, oh no, now all at once I need to find a place with assisted living, or, oh, I'm going to have to figure out memory care. All of that is on campus and would be seamless because of the way it's managed here. So I appreciate that very much. I've had friends who, kind of, oh, I don't want to live in a place like that. I'd rather live in a 55 plus community, or I just want to move into, independent senior housing. And, everybody makes their own choices. But because I'm single, and I want to be able to go ahead without a lot of impediments and also challenges. I want to minimize the challenges so I can put my energy on other things and not have to think about, oh, well, what will happen if if I stop driving completely, then what would happen? Or I get to a point where I need more assistance than I do now. Mm-hmm. And because it's a CCRC, I will know the people here. I think that's another piece too, because I very much appreciate having a community. And it's one of the reasons why I moved here at my age, because I wanted to develop that community before it was a necessity to move someplace. I see sometimes people move when they're maybe in late 80s or 90s, and then it's a little bit more challenging for them to develop a network when they move in at that point, where I wanted to move in and have a network. So if I'm laid up with a broken leg or something, that I've got people here that I know that I can visit with, so yeah. So that was another reason.
Wow. What a refreshing attitude. It is so great to hear your story, and I really admire. I, 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 I'm kind of at a loss of words, but what I call it is the bravery to make these planning steps in advance. But because you've done it, you're still able to live this adventurous, purposeful life. And on our platform, our number one discussion topic is solo aging. And I know you've not used that term exactly, but you talked about being single and you haven't referenced blood relatives or familial connections that drew you to this community. But I have to say, while you might be a solo ager, you're anything but alone. Like you have cultivated a community wherever you drive your van or wherever you visit, whether it be Romania or Montana. And then you had the foresight of seeing that, hey, if I physically live in this building, which I can participate as much or as little in the community as I like, the main benefit is that I am part of a community, and if there are changes in the future, I know who's around me.
Mhm.
Man, you are uh, just a great example of one way to plan for positive aging. I love it. Um, we've
Well,
covered a lot of ground. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think for me, I tend to be a person that makes plans and tries to get things organized. This made perfect sense. But even when I talk with friends who are part of a couple, this also seems like it makes sense to not wait because I think, especially for some couples, oh, but I have this other person. But if something happens to that other person, then where will you be? And that will be a very difficult time. And wouldn't it be nice to have other people there to support you in a place that wasn't overwhelming? Like, oh, now I have to deal with selling my house or downsizing or,
Yep.
you know, and it takes a long time to get into some of these places. I mean, I'm sure you have the numbers on that, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like you just sign up and you get in next week. There's often a waiting list.
Yeah, I agree, and I've interviewed hundreds of people who have made a similar move that you've made. However, I will tell you there are very few that are as interesting, and I've never heard up the path that you've taken there. But many of these people I've interviewed who moved into a community, life plan community as a couple, have cited that it was the best decision that they ever made because when they lost their spouse, it's they had this community around them that understood what they were going through and enabled them to go through the grieving process and start this new chapter in life without their couple with meaning and purpose. So I agree. Rita, I could talk to you for hours, and from I love your entrepreneurial spirit. I love your planning spirit and your community building spirit. But is there anything that you haven't shared with me today that you'd like to share with our community?
I know. So if I have one thing to share in my last 30 seconds, I would encourage people to think about starting a traveling bookstore. Because at this point, I think I'm the only one in the US, and there's definitely a need. And it's not as though you have to travel across country. You can travel just in your region. And you don't need to drive a large van. One year my van broke right before I was going on a trip, and I did the bookstore out of my car, which isn't a huge car. So I think there's lots of possibilities, and it is such an interesting way of meeting people and having discussions. And especially at this point in time, I think talking with people all over the country or even outside of your own little bubble is a really important thing to be doing.
I love this, and I hope that we can be part of the movement for creating traveling bookstores, that maybe somebody's listening to this and says, I'm going to do that. But I'd also I'd widen that field of vision to say, uh, anything that you're passionate about, think of think about, you know, could you turn this into a traveling insert hobby, interest, what have you, for that perhaps it could provide economic value to you and others. But what I like that you've explained is that it's more about giving you a reason to connect with community that you otherwise wouldn't connect with. And you know what's interesting, Rita, you described yourself as an extrovert, okay? And I feel that I'm an extrovert too, but I'm probably wrapped in an introvert's body. And the reason how I became an extrovert was exercising those extrovert muscles. But how I got into that was always having a purpose. So, like for me, going to a cocktail party where I don't know anybody and it's just this social uh, gathering can be oftentimes difficult. But if I had a traveling bookstore and I had a purpose and a reason, and people are coming to me because they love books too, now it makes it a lot easier to be an extrovert. You know,
Mhm, mhm.
do you find did what I say resonate with you at all?
No, well, I mean, the whole idea of purpose is such a valuable one. I mean, a lot of the literature on aging talks about purpose. So we know that that's,
Mhm.
yes, diet, exercise, socializing, but having that sense of purpose, whatever it is, and it is valuable.
Yeah. And well, you've modeled so many great roles for us today, but another thing that ties into our conversation when we talk about solo aging or we talk about having a partner and losing that partner. Oftentimes, people in our community have, for the first time in their life, they need to make friends that they have a need. They've identified, geez, my circle is shrinking or my spouse is gone. And you really are modeling great great ideas and behavior on how we can create that personal village around ourselves. So, all right. Well, I feel like I'm babbling at this point.
No, this has
You,
been a very good conversation.
yeah,
I've enjoyed talking
you're an
to you.
incredible person, and I feel so honored to have been able to talk with you and introduce your story to many people out there. I think that it's going to be very inspiring to some folks that may be struggling with some of the challenges in their own life. So thank you so much.
Thank you.